Your tomato plant is 3 feet tall and carrying 6 tomatoes, maybe 7 if you count the little green rock that's been sitting there since June doing absolutely nothing. The leaves are curling, there's something brown creeping up the lower stem. You're not sure if it's blight or just the plant giving up on you. You've done everything the bag said. Miracle Grow, tomato cages, that $14 transplant shock reducer from the garden center, and your plant looks like it's running a fever and begging for a glass of water. Now picture something else. 40 miles from your subdivision, down a gravel road in Lancaster County, there's a woman in a plain dress and a bonnet who's never read a gardening blog in her life. Never watched a YouTube video, never opened an app. She's got 40 tomato plants in straight rows behind her house. Every one of them is 6 feet tall. Every one of them is bending under its own weight with fruit. She'll pull 200 quarts of canned tomatoes off those plants before September, and those jars will feed 12 people through the winter. Her total investment in soil amendments, fertilizers, and garden store products is $0. Not low. Zero. She didn't buy a single thing you bought, and her plants are producing 5 times what yours are. 3 words. That's the entire difference between her garden and yours. 3 things she does at planting time that you've never heard of, never read about, and never seen on the back of any seed packet or fertilizer bag. Hole, tablet, straw. Remember those? You're going to know exactly what they mean before this video is over, and you're going to use them every single season for the rest of your life. Here's what most people get wrong about the Amish and gardening. They think it's folk wisdom. Cute little tricks from the old country, quaint. That's not what this is. The Amish grow food because they have to. A failed crop doesn't mean a disappointing summer. It means a family doesn't eat. Their techniques aren't passed down for charm, they're passed down because they work. Year after year, in every kind of weather, with no budget for products and no margin for error. This is survival-grade horticulture. And the reason you've never heard these 3 techniques is simple. The Amish aren't online. They don't blog, they don't post, they don't do extension service presentations. Their knowledge moves hand to hand, generation to generation, inside the community. It doesn't reach you because it was never aimed at you. Not because it's a secret, because you and the Amish live in completely different information worlds. Until right now. Because right now, that boundary just got crossed. 3 words, 5 minutes of extra work per plant, total cost under 50 cents, and the difference between 15 tomatoes and 50. But the first secret is the one that's going to make you the most uncomfortable, because it looks like you're killing the plant. Most of what you think you know about planting a tomato came from the little plastic tag stuck in the pot at the nursery. Dig a hole the size of the root ball, drop it in, cover it up, water it, move on. That's fine if you want a plant that survives. The Amish don't plant for survival, they plant for output. And their method starts with a hole that would make most home gardeners nervous. 12 inches deep, that's a foot of open earth below where the root ball sits. But the hole is only half the move. The other half is what happens to the plant before it goes in. You take the seedling out of the pot and you strip every leaf off the bottom 2/3 of the stem, every one. You leave only the top 4 to 6 inches of the plant, with 2 or 3 sets of leaves still attached. Then you lower the whole thing into that 12-inch hole and push soil up around the stem until only that little tuft of green is poking out above ground level. When you're done, it looks wrong. It looks like you just buried a perfectly good plant alive. And the Amish have a saying for that. If it doesn't look like a funeral, you didn't go deep enough. Now, here's the thing. Every instinct you have is screaming that this will kill the plant. You just buried 8 inches of living stem underground, in dirt where things rot. But tomatoes aren't like most plants, and this is where the biology gets wild. The answer is 4 syllables that change everything. Adventitious roots. Most plants can only grow roots from their root ball. That's it. The stem is the stem, the roots are the roots, and they stay in their lanes. Tomatoes don't follow that rule. Every single node on a tomato stem, every bump where a leaf used to be, is capable of sprouting roots if it's in contact with moist soil. Bury 8 inches of stem, and you don't get rot. You get roots, dozens of them, branching off in every direction, reaching deeper and wider than anything that root ball could have produced on its own. A tomato planted at nursery depth has a root system the size of your fist. A tomato buried Amish deep has a root system the size of a basketball, 5 to 10 times larger. And that root system isn't just decoration. It means more water uptake, more nutrients pulled from the soil, a sturdier plant that doesn't blow over in a thunderstorm, and the big one, drought resistance. When July hits and your shallow-rooted tomato is wilting by noon every day, the Amish plant is pulling moisture from a foot underground where the sun can't reach. It doesn't just survive dry weeks, it doesn't even notice them. Here's the part that still gets me. In the wild, tomato plants don't grow upright. They sprawl. They crawl along the ground like vines, and everywhere the stem touches soil, it roots. That's what the plant is designed to do. You're not tricking it by burying it deep, you're giving it what it actually wants. The nursery taught you to plant it like a petunia. The Amish plant it like a tomato. One more thing before we move on. If your soil is rocky or you're working raised beds with shallow depth, the Amish use a second method: trench planting. Instead of a vertical hole, you dig a horizontal trench 4 to 6 inches deep, lay the stripped plant on its side with only the leafy top sticking out above ground, and cover the rest with soil. Within 3 days, the stem curves upward toward the sun. Within a week, you can't tell. Wasn't planted straight. Same root advantage, same buried nodes, sprouting roots, just horizontal instead of vertical. Works in any soil depth. That's the hole. That's secret number one. Zero cost. 5 minutes. A root system that turns your tomato from a houseplant into a machine. But the next secret, the tablet, is the one that sounds the most like folk magic. And it's the one backed by the hardest science. Reach into your medicine cabinet, grab a bottle of plain, uncoated aspirin, not ibuprofen, not Tylenol, not the fancy coated kind, just basic aspirin, the white tablets your grandparents kept next to the bromo seltzer. Now break one in half, drop that half tablet into 2 liters of water, about half a gallon, stir it until it dissolves, and pour that water into the planting hole before you put the tomato in. That's it. That's the entire second secret. Half an aspirin, 2 liters of water poured into the dirt before the plant goes in, cost per plant 2 cents. Now, you're probably thinking this sounds like the kind of thing your neighbor's aunt swears by right next to burying a fish head and talking to the moon. Stay with me for a second. Because this one has a mechanism, and the mechanism has a name. Aspirin is acetyl salicylic acid. When it breaks down in water, it becomes salicylic acid. And salicylic acid is not some random chemical you're dumping into your garden. It's the exact same compound that plants produce naturally when they're under attack. When a fungus hits a tomato leaf, the plant's immune system kicks in and starts pumping salicylic acid through its tissues. That acid triggers something called systemic acquired resistance. SAR. Think of it as the plant's version of a full-body immune alert. Every cell in the plant goes on high alert, producing defensive enzymes and thickening cell walls before the pathogen even reaches them. And that's the whole trick. When you pour aspirin water into the planting hole, you're triggering that immune response before the plant has ever been attacked. You're not treating disease, you're preventing it. The tomato goes into the ground with its defenses already running at full power. Blight shows up in July. The plant is ready. Fusarium wilt tries to move in. The cell walls are already hardened. Septoria leaf spot lands on a lower leaf. The enzymes are already waiting. This isn't folk magic and it isn't wishful thinking. Researchers at the University of Rhode Island tested aspirin-treated tomato plants and found they showed measurably increased resistance to blight and produced larger fruit. The science is published, the mechanism is documented, and the active compound is the same one plants already use on their own. You're just giving them a head start. Now here's the kicker. Walk into any garden center and look at the shelf labeled transplant care. You'll find transplant shock reducer, root stimulator, disease prevention spray, $8, $10, $12 a bottle. And every single one of them is trying to do some version of what a 2-cent aspirin tablet does for free. They're selling you a diluted solution to a problem your grandparents solved with a medicine cabinet staple. One more thing. The Amish don't actually use aspirin. They use willow bark. Steep a handful of bark shavings from a willow tree in hot water overnight, strain it, and use the tea. Same compound. Salicylic acid occurs naturally in willow bark. That's where aspirin was originally derived from in the first place. If you've got a willow tree in your yard, you've got a lifetime supply of the stuff. If you don't, the aspirin costs 2 cents per plant, and you can buy a bottle of 100 tablets for $3 that'll last you a decade. One honest note, aspirin won't make your tomatoes bulletproof. Conditions vary. Soil matters. Weather matters. A brutal wet season can overwhelm any defense. But it gives your plant's body armor that costs 2 cents, and the Amish have been using it in one form or another for longer than the garden center has existed. That's the tablet. Secret number 2, and when you combine it with that deep-planted root system from secret number 1, you've already got a tomato that's tougher, stronger, and more productive than anything your neighbor is growing. But there's still one more, and this last one does 5 things at once. 2 weeks after you plant your tomatoes, go buy a bale of straw, not hay. This matters. Hay is dried grass. It's full of seeds. You lay down hay as mulch, and you've just planted a weed garden around your tomatoes. Straw is different. Straw is the hollow stem left over after grain has been harvested. No seeds, no weeds. Just clean, dry, golden stalks. A bale costs $5 to $8 at any farm supply store, and one bale covers 15 to 20 plants. Take that straw and pile it 6 inches deep around each tomato plant. From 2 inches away from the stem all the way out to the edge of the row, leave that 2-inch gap around the base. Don't pack straw against the stem itself because trapped moisture against the stalk can invite rot, but everywhere else, 6 inches deep all around. Now here's where it gets wild. That single layer of straw does 5 things simultaneously, and each one of them replaces a product you'd otherwise have to buy. First, moisture. 6 inches of straw cuts evaporation by 60 to 70%. That means instead of watering every day, you water twice a week, maybe less. In a hot July, that alone saves you hours. Second, weeds. 6 inches of straw blocks sunlight from reaching the soil surface. No light, no germination. 90% of your weeds just never show up. Third, temperature. Straw insulates the root zone. It buffers daytime heat, spikes, and nighttime cold snaps, keeping the soil at a more stable temperature around the roots. Tomatoes hate wild temperature swings, and straw smooths them out. Fourth, and this one's big, disease prevention. Most soil-borne fungal spores, the ones that cause blight and septoria, reach your lower leaves through rain splash. A raindrop hits bare soil, kicks up a microscopic spore, and lands on a leaf. That's how it starts. Straw stops the splash. It catches the raindrop before it ever touches dirt. That single function reduces disease pressure by 30 to 50% all on its own. And fifth, soil building. By the end of the season, the bottom layer of straw has started to decompose. It breaks down into organic matter, feeding the worms and microbes that make your soil better for next year. You don't remove it, you leave it. And next spring, your soil is richer than it was last year. One material, five functions, and the Amish get their straw from their own threshing floor. It costs them nothing. For you, it costs about 40 cents per plant. But the timing matters. And this is where most people who've heard of straw mulch go wrong. You wait 2 weeks after planting. Not 1 week, not planting day, 2 weeks. And here's why. Straw insulates. That's the whole point. But in early spring, your soil is still warming up. If you pile straw on cold soil, you're locking the cold in. The roots stay cool when they need warmth to establish. So you let the sun heat the soil for 2 weeks, let those new roots settle into warm ground. Then you lay the straw down, and now it locks the warmth in instead of locking it out. Same material, completely different result depending on when you apply it. The Amish don't explain this with thermometers and soil temperature charts. They just say, wait until the plants look like they've settled in. 2 weeks is the shorthand. 40 cents per plant for the straw, 2 cents for the aspirin, 0 for the deep planting. Total cost per plant, 42 cents. Now walk into the garden center and add up what they want you to buy. Starter fertilizer, $8. Transplant shock reducer, $10. Weed barrier, fabrique, $12. Mulch, another 15, that's $45. And none of it does what these three things do together. The deep planting builds a root system that makes starter fertilizer unnecessary. The aspirin triggers an immune response that makes transplant shock reducer pointless. The straw suppresses weeds, retains moisture, prevents disease, and builds soil, which makes the fabric, the mulch bags, and half your watering schedule obsolete. 42 cents versus $45. Remember that number I brought up at the beginning? 15 tomatoes versus 50? This is why. The Amish plant with a root system 10 times the size of yours. They inoculate with a 2-cent immune booster you already own, and they mulch with a $5 bale that does 5 jobs at once. Hole, tablet, straw, 5 minutes of extra work per plant, and the gap between your garden and theirs closes by July. And the strangest part is this. The reason these three techniques don't show up on any label, any product package, any sponsored gardening post has nothing to do with secrecy. It has everything to do with economics. You can't sell a deeper hole. You can't patent aspirin in a watering can. You can't put a markup on straw. There's no money in teaching people to do something for 42 cents that the industry sells for $45. So it stays where it's always been. In communities that grow food to live, not to post about. Passed from hand to hand, mother to daughter, father to son, season after season without a barcode or a brand name. Think about that for a second. Right now, wherever you're watching this, you've probably got a tomato plant within 50 feet of you that's underperforming. Not because you're doing something wrong, because nobody ever showed you the right three things to do before the plant even hits the ground. The garden center didn't tell you because they can't charge for it. The blogs didn't tell you because the Amish don't read blogs. And the seed packet didn't tell you because the seed company wants you buying their starter kit next spring. But now you know. Hole, tablet, straw. Say it once. Say it again. That's your entire planting protocol from now until forever. Dig deep, strip the lower leaves, bury it like a funeral, pour the aspirin water in before the plant goes down, wait 2 weeks, lay the straw. Out of everything in this video, the one thing that stays with me is that 42 cents. Not because it's cheap, because it proves something uncomfortable. The best techniques in gardening, the ones that actually produce, have been right there the whole time. In your medicine cabinet, in a bale, at the farm store, in a deeper hole. And the only reason you didn't know is that nobody could make $1 off telling you. If your mom or your grandmother used to grow tomatoes, drop what she did in the comments. I want to know. Did she bury them deep? Did she use something in the water? Because I guarantee some of you are about to find out that your grandma already knew all three of these, and she never told you either. If this one hit you, hit that like button. And if you know somebody right now who's standing in their garden, staring at a sad tomato plant, wondering what they're doing wrong, send them this. 3 words, 5 minutes. It's that simple. 73% of you watching right now aren't subscribed. That means YouTube won't show you the next one. And next time, we're going into something the Amish do with their soil in October that most gardeners have never even considered. Subscribing is free, one click, and you won't miss it. Hole, tablet, straw. Now go plant something.